To the new girl in town. The new girl in town.
In New South Wales before?
No, I'm from Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Yeah. So, yeah, I started at Melbourne Uni and then I dropped out in my second year. Kind of went and studied youth work, worked as a youth worker, travelled, and then when I came back to finish my arts degree, I applied to go back to Melbourne Uni, but they didn't want me. And then I had applied for Sydney University and I got accepted, and then I ended up here. So yeah, it was a really good change though. Really enjoyed it so far. Yeah.
Cool. And what's made you want to run for board?
Well, I just kind of want to get more involved in like uni life and particularly like student leadership bodies and that sort of stuff, and kind of, you know, contribute more to like diversifying like the union, bringing in different voices, and also like facilitating the pathway for other young Muslim women to be able to access these sort of spaces of leadership. So yeah, that's been my motivation.
Did you want to speak to your campaign manager and your brand a little bit?
Okay, so I'm being managed by Fatima Ali and helped by like Liam Carrigan and Ed as well. They've been really supportive. And this is my brand and logo, Release Lamisse. We chose it because it rhymes and it has to sound kind of cringy and hacky in some sort of way, right? And yeah, we kind of just played up the whole like Arab theme, I guess. Like I'm Egyptian background, so yeah, that's kind of it.
Cool. Are you affiliated with any political parties or aligned with them?
No, I'm not. Largely independent. Like, so what ended up happening is the Muslim Women's Collective got approached by like grassroots to kind of run a candidate that was a bit different, and so through that's how I kind of ended up running. So I have like a grassroots support in that sort of way, but I'm not explicitly affiliated with them, and I want to keep my independence in that sort of way.
And how would you describe your political views?
To the left, centre left, I guess. But I'm pretty pragmatic when it comes to politics and that sort of stuff. And what my intention is not to play a political game or to be kind of any career stacking, you know, candidate. But I really want to make a difference and I really want to create change. Like, I actually am very little interested in like electioneering and all that kind of sort of stuff. I just want to get in there and do stuff. So, yeah.
So pragmatic in what sense? In terms of how?
Like, I want to see something happen, so I will do what I have to do to kind of make it happen. So if I want to see an autonomous space for Muslim women on campus, I'll be very pragmatic about achieving that, because I have a bigger goal than just politics.
Spaces on campus, particularly union-run spaces, are real tight at the moment. How do you see, like, I mean, that's a good policy to start with, but how would you implement that policy in particular?
Well, I'll have to see what happens if I get on union and how it goes, you know. Yeah, okay, so there's limited space, but also the university has limited space. But, you know, students are meant to be a priority. It is a student, you know, service. So, you know, trying to push that through and make that work. I mean, it's 2 years on the board, so it will take time. It's not like I'm going to get there and do it straight away. And even if I don't achieve it, at least then the framework's in place for then maybe another candidate to come forward and then continue on that sort of work. So it's just kind of about like putting the pavement down, I guess, you know. So yeah. So
you'd like to establish a tradition of like, obviously, you represent people that don't normally get up on board. Would you like to create some sort of long-term sustainable mission to get people?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And to kind of like, like establish a tradition of like, you know, kind of untraditional people getting up and getting involved, because we kind of need to kind of break down the sort of way it functions at the moment. Like, it can be very like white-centric and like very privileged in that sort of way, and we need more voices to come up. We need more different people to come up, because they also represent the student body and they also have good ideas and can cater towards different needs, you know, on campus.
Back to the politics. Which of the other candidates do you think your views are most similar to?
That's a good question. I've had a few good chats with Michael Rees, and he's also like a very interesting, pragmatic self-aware candidate with a lot of good ideas. And yeah, we click really well in terms of like our politics and our ideas about the union. Eden Casita as well, obviously because we're both ACAR officers as well as ethnic affairs, so we both have that kind of agenda of representation and people of colour and, you know, diversifying things as well. And also like Marco in terms of kind of just being a bit more left-leaning and, you know, wanting to kind of do different things in that sort of way. So yeah.
Cool. And to that end, have you given much thought to preferences, and as it stands, who would you preference first, second and last?
First, second and last.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll preface
Feel free to
myself
fill in the gaps
first.
if you
Come
want.
on. Yeah. Yeah. Look, we'll see how it goes. I mean, yeah. Look, I'm probably going to preference Marco second because we're both affiliated with group like grassroots in that sort of way. In terms of last, any kind of libertarian probably. Yeah, not a fan.
I suspect we might hear that a few times.
Yep.
Cool. If elected, who would be your preferred candidate for the president?
Look, we'll see how it goes. I mean, third candidate. I know Ed's quite interested in running, and I do have a good relationship with Ed, and he would be a good president. So if he stood for it, I would support him. But it all depends on what happens once that is a thing, you know? Like, things can change. You know, maybe he won't choose to run. Maybe someone else will be better for the job. We'll see how it goes.
And or depending on who you ask, either an unfortunately or fortunately significant portion of board action operates around the Senate-appointed directors. A lot of candidates last year said they wouldn't seek the votes of Senate-appointed directors, and they've done so. Could you say conclusively what you would do now if you were running for executive?
If I seek the votes of Senate-appointed directors, I have not thought that far ahead at all. I mean, like I've said, you know, new to campus, like I just got here second semester last year, kind of still wrapping my head around a lot of like the union stuff and politics and how it all works on campus. I mean, and you know, when you get elected, it can take 6 months for you to kind of really get a grasp on things. So when it comes to that sort of intricate stuff, I mean, I'm still figuring that out, and we'll see how it goes.
That's fine.
Yeah, so under what circumstances would you consider it appropriate to breach your duty to the board for the greater good?
That depends. I mean, it'd have to be like a serious breach of like ethics and their responsibility to students. I mean, I really believe in the union. I mean, yeah, we have our duty towards the welfare and, you know, greater good of the union, but also what I view as our greater responsibilities towards the students. So it'd have to be something in breach of that, you know, yeah.
Yeah, right. Are you familiar with the Tom Rowie situation?
I have become familiar with it.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I was not around, obviously, during that time. But yeah, I've heard a lot about it over the last few days. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Do you think you would act in a similar way, or how do you?
Yeah, look, I probably would. I mean, with my limited knowledge on what happened, it seems like he acted in the best interests of students, but it probably could have been handled in a bit more of a diplomatic way, perhaps by like speaking to the union first and like, you know, trying to work it out internally before taking it externally. But at the same time, like, he did what he did because for me it seems like that ethic imperative towards, you know, releasing that sort of information in the best interests of students.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yeah, right. And back to your campaign. How would you implement a lot of your key policies?
How? It's a good question. We'll see. I mean, like, depends. Like, I could get there and just be kind of blocked on every angle by, like, you know, the CEO or the executives or anything like that. Or I could be, like, quite easily facilitated and, you know, kind of trying to realise these sort of goals. Like, you don't know. It also depends on who's elected on the board. You know, will I have, you know, more allies who are, like, understanding of the things I'm trying to achieve, or will people be working against me? We'll see. Like, I don't know how I'm going to really do that, I'm still figuring out those internal mechanisms of how to actually implement things.
Have you spoken to any current board directors about anything that you're sort of interested in doing?
Yeah, I've spoken to like Ed and Liam a few times, and Kate has been really good as well. She's quite supportive in the more women-focused stuff. But yeah, it all just, I don't know if I can say that. Yeah, no, we'll see how it goes.
All right, okay.
Cool. Do you think, like, of your policy suite, which do you think is your most ambitious?
I gotta think of all my policies.
Don't worry, you and I both.
Yeah. Look, probably the safe space, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, it keeps coming up as well in like interviews and questions and stuff, because people are like, how are you going to do that? Like, there's no space. So yeah, I mean, that seems to be the policy of like the most interest, as well as kind of like controversy in that sort of way. So that's coming across to me as then seeming like I've been questioning myself of being like, well, is it ambitious to kind of want to achieve that? But also then I think, well, why not be ambitious? Just like go for it. You never know when it could be achieved.
Is that a strong sort of thing that your collective is really interested in having?
Yeah, well, it's all centered around like making the university and the union safer and more inclusive for underrepresented students on campus. And that's like a big thing. So it also like relates to kind of my policy of bringing back, you know, interfaith events and an interfaith program run by the union, and as well as like combating Islamophobia on campus and raising more awareness around that. And I mean, not all my policies are like Muslim women focused. There's a lot of policies that aren't, but they're like define me in that sort of identity focused, specific way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Probably an opportune moment to ask about radical sex and consent day.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, you have plans to reform sex and consent day. What do you think that would look like?
So I've spoken to like Talia Chloe about it a few times, and what it would be is just including more workshops around like specific like issues relating to specific identities, and for me that's like Muslim women. So radical sex and consent day can be a bit alienating in terms of like how other groups interact with sex and gender and all those sort of issues related to their cultural and religious perspectives and understanding around how those relationships play out. So to facilitate kind of workshops and safe spaces and, you know, events around being able to discuss the issues that affect us personally as Muslim women and share that with each other, but also utilising this really great idea of like Radical Sex and Consent Day, which is an amazing platform to be able to kind of bring these issues and talk about them, especially issues that affect our community as Muslim women.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sounds cool. Broadly. What do you think is the most important current USU program and why?
The most important current USU program and why? I think it's BB D'Souza's development of the ethnocultural space.
Sure.
Yeah, and I think she's done really great in terms of like getting the ethnocultural portfolio and pushing this idea of safe spaces and bringing these ideas into the student union and like kind of creating, you know, the pathway to be able to kind of discuss these issues and work on them and build on them in the union. And that's something I'm like really keen on continuing to develop once like BB isn't in the union anymore, because it will be there after she's gone and that sort of stuff. So yeah.
Cool. Well, that's kind of an answer to the next question, which was what do you think have been the major policy achievements and also failures of the current board?
Policy achievements and failures. Well, I think also the access equity scheme is also like a big achievement of the union board, and I've been told that's coming into effect next semester, hopefully. So I think that's been pretty great. In terms of failures, I don't know. I guess like maybe not being so inclusive, but we'll see.
That's fair enough.
What do you sort of see as being like the sustained benefit of the expanded access program for low SES students?
Bringing more students on board into the union and, you know, perhaps by bringing more students on board through the access scheme, then we can also increase representation and bring different students into the union, because they'll realise it is quite more accessible and that sort of thing, and we'll see the benefits of the union. So yeah, that's kind of.
Did you get involved in the union when you first came here, by the way?
No, I like, from my early experiences at uni, I was really disinterested in student politics and the union and everything, and I had no desire to kind of get involved. I was just like viewed it as all like, kind of like rich white kids just career stacking, or resume stacking, yeah. And then it was through then getting involved in collectives and seeing the potential for like development, and that you can actually get involved and do stuff, and it is really interesting, pushed me towards kind of engaging more with the union and, you know, activities on campus. So yeah.
Cool. The relationship between the union and the SRC is weird. I think they cater to a lot of similar interests, you know, student welfare broadly. Which institution do you think does more for student welfare?
They serve like the interests of student welfare in different ways, and they both have their purpose in that sort of way. So the way, like, I see the SRC, and I know I've engaged with like student welfare with the SRC on a personal level too, is the SRC offers more personal, like one-on-one support if you're going through like particular difficulties. You know, you can speak to like Mel or any of like the other staff here. And also like in terms of like the offices like Ethnic Affairs and Women's Office, like they do a lot of like good stuff on campus too. But the union is great in the way in which it facilitates more like interpersonal engagement, and like, you know, with the collectives and with like, you know, allowing you to like pursue interests and find other people who have those sort of interests, and, you know, and that is also a form of student welfare because it's like helps you create support networks on campus. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
Absolutely. Well negotiated trap.
No worries.
Do you think? I know you said you weren't entirely across the workings of the Senate-appointed directors before, but
Yeah.
do you think there is a good balance of power between the non-student and the student positions on the board?
I'm not really sure. I'm still trying to figure out how that all works, because I've received like information that it can be a bit imbalanced, and like the corporate interests of the union can be a little bit overbearing sometimes. But I've also received reports that the strength of like the student engagement, particularly like the board of directors, can be made stronger and does have the potential to kind of steer the union towards like the students a bit more, if that makes sense.
Sure. Do you want to speak to your experience that you think makes you a good candidate for board director,
Yeah.
particularly given that the job is mostly administrative and bureaucratic?
Yeah, administrative and bureaucratic, that's going to be so much fun. Yeah, look, I guess the thing is I will hopefully be graduating at the end of this year. So my position on board will be all as like a postgraduate. So which means then I have full-time dedication towards being able to serve on the board and do things, because I'm not going to be distracted by my studies. Also, like, I am a bit older, like I'm 26. So, you know, I have maturity, I guess, in that sort of way, you know, and a lot of life experience, like work experience, travelled a lot, that sort of thing, seeing the way things are done. And have like done a lot of full-time work as well in between. And so I feel like all of that combined will assist in me being able to kind of serve effectively on the board and do things on the like with the union, and if I get elected. So yeah.
A lot of the USU's operation is commercial.
Yeah.
There's an enormous budget.
Yeah.
Do you have much experience in management of commercial operations?
Within the not-for-profit sector. So like I said, I'm a youth worker, but I've also done like administrative work within like the not-for-profit sector, in like development of administration and development of services and that sort of stuff. I did a like 6-week training program in New Zealand, in Auckland, with a not-for-profit, learning how to kind of negotiate budgets and funding and grants and developing a not-for-profit from the ground up. So yeah, and I feel like all those experiences would contribute to like running the union and being able to handle a significant budget as well as commercial operations.
Oh, yeah, this was one from the readers, and again, it sort of speaks to the amount of time you've been at Sydney particularly.
Mhm.
Do you think you have the institutional knowledge and relationships to properly represent union members and students on campus?
Why not? I've been here a year. Like, what's the qualifications for that?
Well,
Like,
I've been here
yeah,
5 and I'm
yeah.
still afraid to try
Yeah,
and
I
represent
mean-
the people on campus.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing, right? It's not about trying to represent everyone on campus. I'm not trying to do that, actually. You know, you have how many is on the union board? 7? 6? 10? Sorry, 8?
It's 11. 11.
11.
It's 11. It's 6 and 5.
Yeah.
Alternating years.
So you've got 11 board candidates, right? So everybody represents like certain interests, and those combined interests then represent the entire student body. So I'm not trying to represent everyone because I know I don't represent everyone, just like not all the candidates would ever represent me as a student. So I represent a very specific base of students, and those are the students who choose to identify with my policies or who I am or whatever. So yeah, I don't try to speak on behalf of the entire student body, but I will serve the interests in the best way that I can.
Cool.
Yeah, right. What do you see the role of the board as an activist space compared to an administrative one? How much scope do you think there is for activism?
Activism? Probably quite limited from my understanding of how it is. Like, yeah, it is quite administrative and bureaucratic, and you also are running an organisation. I guess your activism can come out in kind of pursuing certain policies and trying to implement them, and creating like different ideas within the space of the union. But in terms of like explicit activism, I don't necessarily think it's really the place for it as a board director, you know. It's in your ideology anyway, so yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, right. What do you think it is appropriate to discuss issues like, do you think it is appropriate to discuss issues like CEO remuneration in camera? It's I guess a technicality of how the board works.
What was that
but
last word that you said?
in camera?
Oh, in camera.
Yeah.
Oh, like in that camera you mean, right?
Or,
now? Like on
During
camera?
meetings,
Yeah.
there are
Oh,
sections
okay.
that the public can't watch
Yeah.
and that
Right.
that publications can't report on.
Okay, alright.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
No, it's probably like behind the scenes kind of discussion to have. I mean, yeah, it's just sensitive. That's like, yeah, I don't know.
Sure.
Would you support the full divulgence of all financials and expenses from board directors, like cab charges and that sort
Yeah,
of thing?
definitely. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, right. Do you think the board went far enough in censoring Magyar and Kerrigan over the cab charge?
That's a good question. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I don't know. I should have engaged with that issue a bit more. But yeah, look, it wasn't the smartest thing for them to do. But yeah, I don't know.
It is interesting the way that this incident was handled compared to like Al Stevenson. When was Al Stevenson?
2011.
2011. Yeah, the last comparable scale affair where the board ultimately ended up dismissing him.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
very apologetically, whereas this time round, more seems to have been done to keep them on.
But if you dismiss someone from board, does someone replace them, or does that just mean?
I'm actually not 100% on that.
You're replaced by the highest polling candidate not to win in the year you were put forward. So in
right.
the case of Al Stevenson, it went to the person who came 6th or 7th in their
Okay.
year.
Right.
I think it was 5 or 6.
So then, if Liam Carrigan and Robbie Magar were dismissed, that would leave 2 spaces open, which would then be filled by candidates who had like
Poll next
polled
highest in their
next,
respective
but
units.
then at the same time, despite those candidates polling next, they would not have been through the training and the experience. So you'd have them sitting on the board, but then how effective would they be having missed out on already so much knowledge and experience of how to run things? So I understand kind of why they were then kept on the board, because the board's like things still need to run. It still is an administrative, bureaucratic, you know, process, and things need to be done. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's fair enough. Much a case of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah, totally.
Arguably, the solution is just not to abuse cap charge.
Yeah,
Um,
that's
Abuse your position at all.
Yeah,
yeah, it's
that's.
a
If
responsibility.
we were, if we were to
No,
offer,
yeah,
offer one piece of
yeah.
advice for the
Totally agree with you there.
for successful election to the board, it would be don't abuse the position.
That's pretty standard.
Here's another fun one.
Yeah.
If you had to cut $1 million from the USU budget,
Oh, dear
where
God.
and why?
What? Far out. $1 million is a lot. You could like,
It's just shy of
damage
5%.
yeah, damage a lot of programs with that.
You don't have to wield it as a weapon. This can be a sad letting go rather than
okay. Yeah, that's true.
Angry.
Rather than an angry
Slashing.
chop.
Yeah.
Yeah, like one of those breakups that just lingers. Look, I have no idea. I don't know enough about the intricate ways in which the finances are dealt out within the union anyway. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe slash a few wages? No, I wouldn't do that. People need to live. No, I don't know. Maybe.
In fairness, I think some board directors, some CEOs at the board make quite a lot of money, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Reasonable.
I don't know where I'd take it from. I'd have to look at where it's all going, and you know what we can afford to lose in that sort of way. So yeah, that would be a big decision to take on. It's not really something I can answer here. So yeah.
That's fair. There are rumours that the USU is looking to get rid of the Clubs and Societies Committee and streamline the process of approval by running it directly through the board. What do you think the role of the board is in the approval of societies for political reasons?
For political reasons.
Yeah, that's kind of thrown me. That's an odd clause. What do you think the role is? What do you think the role of the board is in what?
In intervening to approve or disapprove societies, probably in relation to BROSOC and those sorts of more contentious.
Okay, so but do you mean because of a conflict of interest of board members who might have political affiliations?
I guess
yeah.
I misunderstood the question.
Yeah.
I think it's asking what is there a role for the board to intervene for political reasons in society? I assume it is to do with BROSOC.
Yeah,
as you
BROSOC
said.
and life choices probably, I imagine would be.
Well, look, I guess if it becomes quite an irresolvable issue or seemingly irresolvable, it would make sense for the board to intervene to kind of rectify what's going on if it's not being sorted out. I think the committee is important. I think it needs to stay. I don't really think it needs to be streamlined into the board. I think the board should just intervene in situations that are difficult to resolve, like something like BROSOC or life choices. But yeah, and in terms of political reasons, I guess what your real agenda should be is for the safety of students on campus. So if there's a particular society or club that makes a significant portion of students feel unsafe on campus, and those collectives or those groups don't represent the best of interests, then yeah, they probably shouldn't be around. Particularly something like life choices. I think that's really problematic.
What
So,
constitutes a significant portion of students on campus?
That's a good question.
I know it's a dynamic answer as well, so feel free to meander.
Look, if there's enough students saying that, hey, we don't want something like this here, this makes us feel uncomfortable and unsafe, then you need to take those voices into consideration. I mean, you could say that Muslim women constitute quite a small portion of students on campus. yet, you know, their voices matter as much as any other students. You know, if there's women who feel uncomfortable over something like life choices being a collective over campus, even if it's a small portion of women, you need to take that into consideration. You know, like, it's not quantitative in that sense. You don't need to meet a quota of like 50% of students say so. You need to consider the fact that you represent, like, there is an entire student body out there, and they all deserve to be heard, and they all deserve to feel safe.
Sure.
So that's really it.
Yeah, right. Are you willing to admit that you may not achieve all of your policies and everything you've set out to do?
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's normal, right? Like, that, but that's part and parcel of having ambition, is like, you set your goal, it might seem like really far away, you might reach it, or you might, like, you know, fall close to it, but that's about being realistic, you know, like, no candidate is ever going to fulfill all their policies, and everybody knows that, you know, the students electing you know that, but what you hope for is that you'll be able to achieve most of them, some of them, maybe like one of your favourite runs or a really significant one. But the point is that you will achieve something, and even if you don't, you will leave like a legacy for other students to kind of come in and then maybe continue on developing what you've done. So, yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's okay.
Yeah, right. What would you say are your sort of either your three most, like, the 3 issues that you really want to achieve?
In my policies?
Yeah, your 3 most important, I guess.
The safe space, and I would really like to bring back more kind of like the interfaith event, and also the integrating like radical sex and consent day to have more kind of diverse workshops. That's 3. Yeah.
There we go. What do you sort of see as the role of Interfaith Week?
The way I want it to go is to not just be like bogged down in theology. It's not about theology. It's about the lived experiences of students who have different identities and different faiths, and how that affects their lives and the way they interact with each other, with society, and like with the world in general. And I think that making it more contemporary and making it more relevant is a way to kind of reinvigorate those sort of discussions and debates, because we don't need to be debating about who's right or wrong, but like it's about sharing and kind of bridging those sort of gaps.
Yeah, right, so making it almost like an ethnocultural space and sort of an event.
Yeah,
an
event for discussion, an event for connecting, you know, like a lot of us just kind of exist in bubbles, or we don't interact with different ideas, and you know, like, it's not really fun to talk about religion, but it's like fun to talk about people, right? So that's kind of what it is, and these just happen to be people with religions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, right, that's really cool. Your immigration advice policy requires working with the SRC. There really
that's a big one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
There unfortunately isn't much precedence for the 2 bodies, at least in recent years, working together.
Yeah, I'm aware.
How do you kind of see that, pursuing that? Like, do you have any sort of strategies in mind for how you would try and achieve that?
It's just be about kind of trying to bridge it, isn't it? Like, just because there's a precedent doesn't mean that's just how it has to be. You know, it can be changed. I'm not really sure how I'd go about doing that, but that's definitely something I try to figure out being on the board, and trying to change that precedent as well. Like, it doesn't make sense to have, you know, all these like organizations and like programs and stuff that aren't interacting. Like, why? You reduce it, like, effectiveness in being able to serve the student body when you don't work together. So why not work together? So
Yeah, right. I guess we should ask you, do you think institutional knowledge going into the board is important?
No, I don't actually. I think, like, you know, that's the purpose of learning. Like, you will learn all that when you're on the board. I mean, you've got to have some idea about what goes on, but, like, that will come with experience and with training and with being there and interacting with it. Like, come on, reading the regulations, it's boring, you know. Like, you know, I'm very much a hands-on learner, and I learn through interacting, and I learn through being in the situation. If you just chuck papers in front of me and then say, well, here's how we do things, that's just like, what are you doing? So, like, once I'm in situations, that's how I start learning. And I'm very quick to learn in that sort of way, because I know that's how I learn.
I think if most people were honest, that would be true.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly.
I'm just hoping, because the test results are like frankly dire.
Sort of dire.
This is not a.
Sort of dire.
Yeah.